chat. So, Marcel, how are you
Oh, I'm
doing?
good. I'm good. I'm a little tired. It's a little late for me, but I feel great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only slot we could find. Yeah, so you can introduce yourself.
Okay, sure. My name is Marcel. I'm from Poland, from Krakow. I study at an art school at the moment, and I did 2 years of film theory before that at a university here in Krakow.
Okay, and when did you get into film studies?
Well, I've been interested in film ever since I was a very small child. It was kind of my main bonding activity with my dad was to watch movies. So I've watched a ton of movies throughout my life. And after I got out of high school, I had to kind of decide on what to do for the next couple of years. And I was supposed to study to be an actor, but I decided against that at the last minute. So I applied to film studies, kind of thinking, oh, maybe I'll do it for a year. I never
Mm-hmm.
really planned to finish it, and well, I didn't end up finishing it, but I did spend 2 years there. And yeah, I've always been interested in film. I just realized at some point that I'd rather work on movies instead of writing about movies and writing and reading about movies. Yeah. So I wanted to do something a little bit more practical.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always loved cinema. So
Yeah, so you prefer working behind the camera?
um, I don't know if I prefer working behind the camera instead of in front of the camera. I enjoy both equally, I'd say. It's just I've had more opportunities to be behind the camera these days, and I appreciate that a lot, and I enjoy it a lot. I've been thinking about maybe trying to get back into acting, but it's really difficult, and I have more experience behind the camera now than I ever did in front of it because back when I did acting, I mostly did theater anyway.
Okay. Is there a favorite part for you to work on behind the camera, cinematography, direction, something like that?
A favorite part?
Yeah.
It's hard to say because when I make my own stuff, I mostly do animation and working with animation at the level that I'm working with animation. You kind of have to do everything. So I set up the lights, I set up the sound, I mix the sound after I edit everything I film. And I think I enjoy everything pretty much equally. I find it a little difficult to work with other people sometimes, which is why recently I've been thinking about like taking a step back from taking on things that are related to directing with
Mm-hmm.
actors, and I prefer to sit in front of my laptop and just edit by myself. And I'm not too big on writing scripts either right now. But I have to, so I'm doing it anyway. But it's not my favorite part, I don't think.
Okay, so given the opportunity, would you like to direct a movie?
Oh, definitely. If I had the opportunity, if I had the money and the support needed to do it, I would love to direct a film. Yeah, I think I'd prefer getting a chance to direct over getting a chance to write a script, but I would jump on either probably.
Yeah, of course. And you told me you had a very close experience in a Hollywood movie set.
Yeah. I got a job back in 2020, I believe, working with an actor for a Hollywood movie as a dialect coach.
Mm-hmm.
And for a year, I think, we worked through Zoom online, also because it was COVID at the time, on his dialect for the film. But then I got invited to actually come to the set, which was in Berlin, in one of the
Mm-hmm.
movie studios they have there. So I spent like a week hanging around that film set, mostly just watching people work, taking like an hour or two to practice what we had to practice with the actor I was working with.
Okay, what was the most surprising thing or interesting thing that you didn't expect?
So I've been to a few really small film sets, but that was my only chance to visit a really big studio, a super professional studio. And it was strange in general. It's a very strange experience to meet people that you see on the screen,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and all the assistants running around. And I think the experience in general was very tainted by COVID. Everybody had to get tested going in, and I couldn't really like hang out with the actors as much as I would like to probably, because we had to like keep our distance. But I did get to just like chat with the actors during lunch breaks, which was really fun, and everybody was really down to earth and just nice to talk to. The studio itself was massive. and it was just interesting to see like the rooms that the Matrix was shot in.
Oh wow.
And yeah, everybody gets their own trailer, so I got to hang out in one of these little trailers with the actor I was working with. It was a fun experience generally. Yeah.
Okay, talking about trailer, something came to my mind. Like I heard in a movie itself that this trailer or caravan culture tainted a bit in, like, say, the bromance of the movie stars. So in, let's say, in very old age, comparatively to cinema, people used to sit together after between the shots, or they will have a tent and they will sit together in a tent, they will talk about movie, they will talk about life, and there is a cinema culture happening around there. And since the introduction of caravan, it's everyone is alone in their caravan, they come out, they shoot the movie, they go back in caravan. What do you think about it?
Well, that's really interesting. At the movie set I was at, most of the actors, except for the really, really famous ones, would kind of flood outside to smoke cigarettes and talk to each other. I think everybody was really, really looking for any kind of human connection also because it was COVID. So everybody tried to sit as close together as possible and just chat to each other. But then some assistant or some AD would come and like wave the finger at us and say that we can't be that close together because of COVID. So just the one actor that was really, really famous would spend his entire time there in his trailer. Which I kind of get. From what I gathered, he was mostly napping and relaxing. Um, but I think it has
You
there
don't
is
want to name drop, right?
it was, I believe his name is Liam Cunningham. He was in Game of
Okay,
Thrones.
yeah.
Yeah, and he was in that movie as well. I remember sitting outside.
I think for the people who don't know, it's Sir Davos in Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I haven't seen Game of Thrones,
yeah.
but
I'm nerding out always about Game of Thrones.
yeah, I remember I was sitting at some point outside on my own, just smoking a cigarette on a cigarette break. And I saw some assistant running really quickly to Liam Cunningham's trailer, knocking on the door. And the assistant clearly woke him up because he came out of the trailer really angry and like cursing under his breath about how he has to go and shoot the movie now, but everything is delayed and whatever. He seemed really annoyed that he was being bothered at all. But I got to like meet him and shake his hand because the guy I was working with, who was my great friend at the time as well, kind of tried to introduce me to everyone, just so I could get the full experience of meeting all the people that were there.
Yeah, it's a really interesting experience to have. And you told me because of your relationship with the actor you coached, you also been to LA.
Yeah.
And tell me about LA. Especially, I think you had the opportunity to meet so many people who work inside Hollywood and talk about cinema and hang out. Well, how was it?
That's true. I did get to meet a lot of people. It was a really crazy experience in general. That friend of mine that I worked with invited me to visit him, meet his friends, and just hang out, spend some time together because we became great friends over Zoom. And so then we don't really get the chance to hang out all the time because we live on different continents. And at some point, I just had some spare money and spare time, and so I flew over there to visit him. And I got to meet a lot of interesting people. And it is kind of true what they say about LA that it's hard to meet somebody who doesn't work in the industry.
Okay.
Because I would go to like a random bar and sit with random people, and it turns out they're comedians or editors or whatever, and everybody kind of tries to do their thing there. The city in itself, I hated it. I won't lie. It's completely unwalkable. It feels unlivable. I haven't gotten the chance to see many of the sites and stuff. I didn't really do any of the sightseeing that you would normally do probably when you visited LA because it was mostly hanging out with friends. But just the unwalkability, it's on its own is a nightmare to me. As compared to San Francisco, that I also got to visit while I was there, which is I think the closest to a European city I've ever seen in the States. So LA in itself, I didn't really enjoy as a city, but I would definitely go back if I had the chance
Yeah.
to like hang out with the people again because they were great people genuinely as well. I was kind of worried about what it might be like to talk to famous executives, movie directors, and so on. But they all seemed really down to earth and funnily interested in talking to me because they would ask
Mm-hmm.
me like, "Oh, what's the Eastern European perspective on like whatever project I'm working on right now?" And I felt like I seemed almost exotic to some of them, which was just funny. But they were nice and kind people for the most part. Yeah.
Okay, and you also told me you go to attend a premiere or some kind of. Wasn't it a premiere for Ant-Man?
Yeah, I did get to kind of hang out behind the scenes. When Ant-Man 3 was premiering, they were showing it in a couple of cinemas in LA. And I think Marvel does this thing where when they have a premiere, they go to a few of the cinemas in LA to kind of walk on stage and say, "Hey, thanks for seeing the
Okay.
movie," and so on. So I was in the back of the cinema, just standing there watching people on stage, like answering a couple of questions maybe, or maybe they just walked in and said, "Hey guys, thanks for seeing the movie. I hope you enjoy it," and stuff. People are really excited. Like everybody around me just pulled their phones out to record. I think they must have felt really lucky to be at the screening where like some of the actors are there on stage. So they just walk on stage, welcome everyone to the cinema, thank them for seeing the film, and then we just went and had dinner at a fancy restaurant, and I got to talk to some of the people who were
Wow.
there.
And did you meet the man behind the brains,
Which
Kevin?
one? Kevin Feige,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
yeah. I did get to meet Kevin Feige. He shook my hand. He thanked me for being there because I was brought there as a friend of David's, and David is in the film. And so I was kind of introduced to everyone as David's friend and his dialect coach for his previous project. And yeah, Kevin Feige was nice. He sat with us for a good while, told some stories. Yeah,
Ah, okay, interesting. And meeting Kevin Feige, how was it? Because he's exactly like it's different. You cannot compare meeting Kevin with, for example, meeting Brad Pitt. It's two different experience. But as
definitely.
someone who works and studies cinema, what do you think about what Kevin had made the Marvel industry? Let's say.
I don't really know all that much about the behind the scenes of the MCU and so on, so I don't really know what Kevin Feige is responsible for as compared to what he isn't when it comes to these movies. What I can say is he seemed like a really regular, down to earth guy, just wearing regular clothes and talking to us like he was any other person, really. I have a few problems with the MCU in general as a whole, but I don't really attribute any of them to any specific person
Yeah,
because
of
I
course.
don't know all that much about it at this point anymore because I kind of stopped being all that interested in what's been happening in those films in recent years. Yeah,
Okay, yeah, I have been a great and loyal Marvel fan for a long time, but I think it ended with Endgame for me, and after that, I didn't have the same, you know, interest to go watch the movie. I never missed. I think since Civil War came out, I never missed the first show of any Marvel movie. Like I would cut my classes, cut my university, even be late to work, but not anymore. Something happened. I think they had a story from point A to point Z, and it had a
yeah,
perfect ending, almost poetic ending. And after that, it just became, at least for me, it was always about making money. But for me,
definitely.
since I grew up with Iron Man, I grew up with Cap and all, there was something interesting for me. I was hooked always in the story. But after that part ended, suddenly it was wide open. Okay, it's just like Scorsese said, theme park movies
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I can definitely relate to that as well because I grew up on Spider-Man and just reading comic books. And the first couple of films that started coming out, I was really excited for them, and I would go to the cinema as well. But I think at some point, I think the last film I watched was like Age of Ultron, maybe.
Wow.
I think the novelty just wore off for me. And I like to, in film, because I also watch a lot of TV shows, but with film specifically, I like when there's stuff that's new and exciting, like a new idea, a new concept, new stylistic choices,
Yeah.
whatever. And all of these films kind of feel the same. They follow a very similar structure. The actors obviously don't change, and I think I've come to realize that I'm just generally not too fond of like the idea of a cinematic universe. I think it loses its value maybe pretty quickly, for me at least. And I know people like generally like coming back to things they know and things that feel familiar, so it kind of probably feels like home to watch another film with the same actors, same characters, similar plot. But for me, there's just not much interesting stuff left in those films. I think they all became pretty similar, and even when they try to make new and exciting choices, it still follows basically the same structure. Um, and yeah, they just stopped exciting me, and they kind of started feeling hollow almost,
Exactly.
and definitely like money grabs. Like that's obvious, and I don't think anybody would deny that the MCU is a business, and it's to make money and not really, I don't know, revolutionize cinema or whatever.
Yeah, and I believe both kind of cinemas is needed, right? We need entertainers, we need offbeat cinemas. It's two different audiences. But as a net, do you think Marvel affected whole movie watching experience in general, like to so many audiences?
Yeah, definitely. I think there is a point to be made about how Marvel movies affect audiences in terms of their kind of comprehension of films, because when you watch a lot of very similar or the same stuff, and also Marvel films are very like on the nose, maybe. Like there's no second meaning behind everything.
Yeah,
They don't
yeah.
really utilize metaphors or whatever. It's a simple plot, it's a simple structure. And I feel like it might, especially in the future when it carries on, but still probably already, might have affected audiences poorly in terms of their ability to comprehend cinema and their kind of movie literacy, maybe,
Oh, okay.
where you'll watch a film that doesn't follow that structure and suddenly you don't quite get it. Like I've heard criticisms of films that to me were really simple plots, basically an action movie, and people criticize them online, especially Americans. Um, Criticize them for being too intellectual or like too convoluted, and I watch them and I think like, whatever do you mean? Like, there's nothing convoluted about it. There's nothing that I didn't get watching it. And so, yeah, when basic Hollywood films that aren't Marvel movies or aren't just like action flicks start feeling like intellectual cinema, people should probably watch more different kinds of films.
Yeah, I think because of all this too, let's say intellectual films or something different, uh, at least in US, people doesn't go to watch in the cinema
Yeah.
for this kind of movies. They wait until it come to Netflix or any other OTT platforms. And so in that sense, what do you think about OTT platforms? Because it's revolutionized how we watch movies.
For sure.
Like I used to go personally, like love watching movies in cinema because it's completely different experience. But since Netflix, since Max and everything, it's just become easy, right? To sit in your bed, sit in your couch, press few buttons, and there is the newest movie that's released.
Yeah, I think OTT platforms are kind of becoming the new TV. They were supposed to be something that we could have instead of TV, but now there's so many platforms that you're
Yeah.
basically just subscribing to different channels, like you were flicking through channels on TV back in the day. When it comes to cinema going, kind of like you said, going to the cinema is an experience, and it's a completely
Yeah.
different experience to watching a film at home. I personally go to the cinema a lot when I'm like off work and it's the summer and I don't go to school either. I try to go to the cinema every day because, well, I don't get to pick what's on, which I really enjoy. I just check the timetable for the cinema and I go to see what they're showing. And it's, I don't know, sitting through a movie with an audience, with other people also watching it on a big screen is very valuable to me, and I would never give that up. If somebody offered that, I don't know, I would get Netflix for free
Yeah.
for a lifetime. If I never went to the cinema again, I wouldn't take that offer. But I think for Americans, probably specifically, but for audiences in general. Going to the cinema now has to be even more of an experience than it is to me, because to me it's a valuable experience in itself. But I think like what Marvel does with big releases and popcorn cups with
Yeah,
characters on
exactly.
them
Yeah.
and stuff, you kind of have to, as a marketing ploy, make going to the cinema exciting. And I've also from behind the scenes seen a little bit of how they have to specifically advertise the experience of like, oh, you have to see this film in IMAX or something, because
Mm-hmm.
they make money from it, and so many people just won't go to the cinema anymore and just wait till it's online. And the money is in the cinema, so they have to specifically push for people to go to the cinema, which probably less people do than they used to. I don't know. For me, specifically, going to small independent cinemas is very precious. I don't really go to big multiplexes either, because it's too expensive and it's not the same experience to like an independent cinema. But I think many people don't go to the cinema anymore because they're able to just watch everything at home. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think there is also pros and cons, of course. And I think one of the pros is a lot of people who were lazy to watch a movie started to watch movies because of this. And I believe, at least where I come from, think it started in 2020. We were very late to have Netflix or any other OTT platforms, and the reason it became popular is because of COVID, because the cinemas was
Yeah.
closed, and there was big protest from these unions of cinema owners, even movie producers. They didn't like the idea of OTT platforms, but now the cinema movie plays in theater for 1 month and then comes to OTT platform, and they get paid for that too.
Yeah.
So they get to collect the money from box office, and then the movie comes to OTT platforms. So in that sense, it's a very good option to have to watch a movie. But
Definitely.
still, yeah, still, I think the last movie I watched in cinema is Eyes Wide Shut. It was 1 month ago, yeah, and I never watched that movie. So the first time I watched that movie, I could watch it in theater. It was in Podbaranami
Yeah, I
in the
love that
fest.
cinema.
Yeah, that's it was a wonderful experience, and I'm sure if I watched it alone at home in Netflix or even in TV, the feeling would be much different.
For sure.
For sure I will like it because it's a Kubrick movie at the end of the day. But still, watching it there, experiencing it with other people, it's a special experience.
Yeah, and it's a special experience, exactly like you said. I can put a movie on any second at home, but then I might get distracted, switch it off, go to make tea, or decide I'm hungry or whatever. And when I go to the cinema, it's like a plan that I have for that evening or that day. Like tomorrow, I'm going to go to the cinema, I'll take a shower, I'll get dressed, I'll get out of the house, and I'll go to the cinema.
Yeah.
And it's something to
Yeah,
do.
it's a commitment. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's something to do with friends as well.
Exactly, yes.
Because I invite people over to my place to watch movies all the time. But still, going to the cinema is very special as compared to just putting something on when we're all sitting on the couch at home.
Do you think there will be another change, something that will again revolutionize, and OTT platforms will transform into something more?
That's interesting. I'm not all that well educated on that, but I imagine since we had TV, and then Netflix became a big thing. Well, they used to mail DVDs to
DVDs,
you
yeah.
before they became an OTT platform, and now we have all these OTT platforms, which soon I think they'll start offering deals, maybe like you'll pay a certain amount of money and get three of them instead of just one. I think they have to figure something out because people, I feel like, are sick of paying for 5 different platforms, and we'll all just go back to watching TV if we have to pay for 7 and 8 and 9 of these, or torrenting and pirating, because I've seen online already major discussions about how people started pirating stuff again like they used to 10, 20 years ago, because they don't want to pay for 5, 6 different platforms. I think something has to change, but I don't have a specific idea on what that will be. But something will happen for sure.
Yeah, something has to happen. I also read something about how VR headsets would change the experience of movie watching, also entertainment in general, like not only movies, for sports event, how it will be utilized as a tool that people don't have to go to stadiums again. They can just how VR will become the OTT platform of sports industry. Yeah, that's very interesting, and also I think watching movie there will be a thing for sure.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of these ideas I've seen recently feel very isolating
Mm-hmm.
because you go to a sports stadium to experience the game with other
Yeah.
people, and when you put a VR headset on, you kind of feel like you're doing the same thing, but at the end of the day, you're on your own with a VR headset
Yeah.
on. And I saw this idea recently somewhere online. I don't think it's going to be possible anytime in the near future anyway, but the idea in itself felt just crazy and ridiculous to me. Somebody wrote about how, oh, with the rise of AI and everything, soon we'll be able to write a prompt in some AI generator thing and just get a movie spit out by AI specifically for us and like suited to our needs with all the themes that we want and everything. And I mentioned that to a friend of mine, and he heard me out, and he was just like, "That's ridiculous. That's the most isolating thing that you could do because you watch movies and then you talk to people about them.
Mm-hmm.
So if we both see the same movie, we'll have opinions on it, and we can spend hours upon hours just talking about what we thought about the movie." And getting something specifically tailored just to me, so I watch the film, I get the experience by myself in my living room, and then I kind of just sit with it. It
Yeah.
feels aside, like putting aside all the other problems I have with AI, it's just, why would you want that? Why would you want
Exactly.
that?
Yeah. It will not feel like, because maybe I'm stupid, maybe I'm ignorant, but I believe and I will keep believing that AI cannot do anything creative,
I
and I
agree.
know they are doing painting, designing all this stuff, but it's always stolen data from someone who already did it.
Exactly.
And especially when it comes to music, movies, I want to believe AI can never do it, because people who produce this, be it movie, be it music, it comes from their life experiences too. Like when a director shoots a movie, he watched thousands of movies in his life. He
Yeah,
was influenced by many people in his life, many directors. That all reflects on his work. Same for someone writing a script or someone writing a story. It touches from their life.
for sure.
Like let's take for example an Eminem song. It comes from his life. It hits us because we know what is he singing, what is he rapping is real. It
Yeah.
connects with us. But how we will feel the same about an AI, which is making some words which rhymes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully, we never get to see a reality where entertainment is all produced by AI because entertainment is so important and art is so important. But as you said, it comes from real experiences of real people, and AI can kind of try to reproduce that, maybe, like attempt to imitate it, but it's never going to be. I don't think it's ever going to be like the real thing.
Yeah, you told me like there is already some movements against AI use in Hollywood.
Oh, for sure. There's like a lot of hatred online for utilizing AI in any kind of art projects, really, and in movies especially because you make a lot of money from movies. And making a film, you can hire someone and pay them, and that's a job that you're giving to someone. And if you use AI instead, then, well, a real artist doesn't get hired, and artists struggle anyway. And it's like there's a big movement of people, afraid of AI taking our jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not too scared of that, just because I just hope people see the difference between
Yeah,
like AI
exactly.
and art made by actual artists. But yeah, people are not fond. Most people, I think, at least from what I read online, are not fond of the usage of AI in film. I watched this film recently by a director called Harmony Korine.
Mm-hmm.
That was supposed to be super like all new ideas, revolutionary, something that isn't a movie anymore. And it used a lot of AI.
Mm-hmm.
And I love experimental cinema. I love when people try to do something new. And yeah, it excites me to see new ideas on screen, even if I don't like the ideas themselves. But that film, it was called Aggro Drift, I believe. It was really hard for me to sit through. I kept my eyes on it for like 20 minutes, and then I couldn't sit through most of it. And I don't really know how much of it was AI. I think it's kind of debated. I don't think there's an official statement about it, but it felt like the script was written by AI. It was just bad. It was not fun to watch. I hope I don't offend any fans of Harmony Korine, but I watched it, and my only thought I had after was, if you hate movies, don't make them.
What's the name of the movie?
It's called Aggro Drift.
Aggro Drift.
And yeah, and the
Okay.
director has come out, speaking about how, oh, there hasn't been any interesting films since however long ago, and just filmmaking sucks and movies suck. So he's gonna make something new and different. And like, my only thought about that is, if you hate movies, don't make them. You can do something else. So yeah, I guess recommend like seeing the trailer on YouTube just to see
Okay.
like what it looks like, because visually it's kind of interesting. But watching the film itself, I don't know. It was a difficult experience for me. I didn't like it.
Okay, I will give it a watch. I mean, the trailer, not the movie. And we talked a little bit about how movie literacy of especially Hollywood audience is at a challenging stage. And do you think that's why recently, in a lot of, for example, few weeks ago, Golden Globes, sorry, Emmy was happening, and I think Shogun, the show, won the record amount of
Oh
awards.
wow.
Yeah, and it's still in a Hollywood production, but there is this Japanese side to it, and Parasite won the best movie award. So, do you think while Hollywood audience have a downfall in movie literacy, South Korean movies is coming to prominence? Do you think it's connected?
I don't really know. I think there's also something to be said about when Oscars say something is good, more people are gonna watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, when just if you read online about something being good a lot, then you're gonna want to see it. And I think there's also like a herd mentality of, oh, so many people liked Parasite, I'd feel stupid coming out and saying I didn't really get it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying people didn't get it. I think it's a good movie. And honestly, when I first watched it, didn't really get it. I
Mm-hmm.
had to get it explained to me. I was super tired in that cinema. But I don't really follow all the awards ceremonies all that much anymore either. But I hope we're going to see more international cinema
Mm-hmm.
becoming more and more popular with audiences, because Hollywood has such a massive influence on international audiences
Mm-hmm.
that I feel like many people don't watch any other movies. We
Yeah,
all
yeah.
just watch American movies, and there's so much, so many interesting things to be found in like French cinema, like everywhere in Europe. And then when you step out of Europe, there is even more, and it's even more interesting. And yeah, I enjoy Korean films a lot, for example, but we don't really get the chance to see all that much when it comes to international cinema, because it doesn't get shown
Mm-hmm.
in cinemas, and finding it on OTT platforms, finding those films on OTT platforms isn't super easy, because they're not as advertised as Hollywood
Yeah,
productions.
yeah.
So you kind of have to really dig for international stuff. So I hope international movies are going to become more popular in the States, because if they become more popular in the
Mm.
States, they're going to become more popular everywhere.
Yeah, makes sense. And Parasite winning, it's a good movie, like you
Yeah,
said. But trust me, there are better movies which
of
should have won
course.
Oscars in South Korean industry,
Yeah.
right? Memories of Murder, I would pick any day, any time, over Parasite winning the best movie. But while talking about that, I think again OTT platforms, how they connect international cinema is also mentionable, because I told you about my movie industry, how
Yeah.
like I find it very intellectual and very different from Indian movie and international movie itself, like Hollywood movie, let's say. So there was recently a movie, I think it came out late last year. It's the name is Got Life, and it's a very well made movie, slow movie, but it's based on real story, and it's in Netflix. And a couple of days ago, one of my friend who works with me in my office, he's from Egypt. He told me it's trending in Egypt.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
so and in Netflix. So that all happens because of OTT too.
Yeah.
And coming back to Oscars, I wanted to ask you something. How valuable and trustworthy is Oscars?
I don't, for me personally, they don't really influence my opinions or what ends up interesting me. But I should have prefaced everything I said with, I'm no expert. I did film
Yeah, of
theory
course.
for 2 years and I dropped out to pursue an art career. So all of this is just my own opinions. So for me personally, it's like, it's kind of interesting to see what they pick, or like what ends up being popular or appreciated when it comes to ceremonies like these. But when like we get down to it and like I sit down and watch those films, I used to years ago when I like got up really late at night and watched the ceremonies when they were happening. I would write every single one of these movies on a list and I would watch every single one of them. I don't really do that anymore. I have a look and then I pick, if something interests me, I pick that and I watch that. But I don't really have that attachment to Oscars anymore. That feeling of like, oh, I have to see every single Oscar nominated movie because they're definitely all great. Because, I mean, they're probably not. I haven't seen all of them, so I can't speak on all of them. But I feel like many of the movies that get nominated, they get nominated due to certain reasons that aren't always just, oh, it's a great movie. Like there's, I'm sure, a million things happening behind the scenes and
Do
a
you think
million
political
reasons,
reasons?
political or like just industry reasons, money related reasons, that they pick certain things over others. And it's just, I don't think it's the kind of know-it-all thing that, oh, if that movie got the Oscar for Best Picture, it's the best picture of that year. I think that's far from true.
Do you think Oscars can be bought?
I have no idea. I don't know. I kind of want to say yeah, probably, because why not?
Yeah.
In the States, I feel like everything can be bought and anything can be bought, but I don't know. I never really did any digging into like conspiracy theories about Oscars being bought or whatever. I don't think it's. I wouldn't say no for sure. I don't know
Okay. Speaking about controversial things, propaganda is used in cinema since I think the beginning of cinema.
for sure.
Yeah, and now it's at the highest, I would say, even, and Hollywood does it. Uh, I don't know, European movies does it. All kind of movies does it.
Yeah,
And somehow when you watch a propaganda cinema, especially if it's very subtle, it straightly gets into your brain.
yeah,
And I think Hollywood is the best at it because they used to do it in a very subtle way about all the heroic movies, how White House is shown, how the president is portrayed in movies.
yeah,
It affected like me, including me, a lot of people I know. The way we look at US, the way we perceive US,
for
it's
sure.
comes from this cinema too. So what do you think about propaganda being used? Even Marvel movies
For
has
sure.
some propaganda in it.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say that propaganda is like at an all-time high right now. I think you can make an argument, for Soviet cinema being the most propaganda-filled cinema ever. But back then and in those spaces, propaganda films were propaganda films first and foremost, and you would just know
Yeah,
watching them,
exactly.
right? Or like the Third Reich made a lot of films that were just propaganda films. They were open about it, and you couldn't really make anything else. And now, as you said, it's really subtle, and I think a lot of people kind of maybe don't realize that there's propaganda in the films they're watching. But propaganda can be anything. It can be good, it can be bad. I think it's not completely unnecessary,
Mm-hmm.
really, because progressive cinema is a type of propaganda, or, making any kind of film that shows certain people in a good light, and maybe it's the kind of people that we would personally want to be shown in a good light. That's a type of propaganda. It's not necessarily bad. The bad kind of propaganda, I guess, is just the propaganda that doesn't kind of agree with our views. So like the propaganda I don't like is, propaganda, all the shows and movies about good police. That's bad propaganda for sure. And I hate that. And like you said, with Marvel movies, idolizing the military, idolizing the idea of America, of American nationalism, and Captain America being a white blonde guy, and that kind of instills that idea of that's what an American is. I guess. I mean, that was propaganda way back when it was still just the comic books, not the movies. But I think Hollywood makes a lot of films about military good, police good, the president good, the
Yeah.
government good, which is ridiculous because none of those things are true.
Mm-hmm.
And people watch these films and they believe it. And I think that kind of influences society poorly. Yeah.
Okay, progressive cinema. What do you think about there is a lot of diversity and there are a lot of argument that it's forced diversity. We talked briefly about it when we met. So, if I want to pick one example, I would say Rings of Power
Yeah.
had this. So it was a big controversy. There is a black elf, I
I
think.
think so,
I
yeah.
didn't watch the show, so I don't know. What's your opinion on this?
I did some reading when I was coming here on forced diversity, kind of looking for arguments that would in any way convince me that it's a thing. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really find any. Like, I think it's, the argument made for forced diversity is both in front of the camera and behind the scenes. Like, oh, they're trying to hire more female screenwriters or whatever. I just don't see how that's bad. I just don't see how that's bad. People get hired on merit anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and when it comes to to stuff being in front of the camera, any kind of argument being made about how it's unrealistic to have a black elf in Rings of Power is just like, bro, it's an elf. It's an elf. That's pretty unrealistic. Why do you care if the elf is black? I have no words for people like that. I have no idea what to say when somebody comes at me and is like, oh, Tolkien wouldn't like it. Because he probably would if you read about kind of like what Tolkien has talked about before he passed. He was a pretty progressive guy. But yeah, when it comes to fantasy movies and fantasy shows, there's no argument to be
Yeah.
made about diversity not being realistic. It's ridiculous. There's no reason why an elf couldn't be black. And I was also thinking about, because diversity is both race and like a bunch of other things. And
Yeah.
I'm a white guy, so speaking as a white guy, I think we've all seen enough white guys on the screen forever. And yeah, people talk about like, oh, what if James Bond is a woman, or what if James Bond is black? I'm like, make James Bond a woman. I think that would be great. I'd be excited to watch that. And if somebody's pissed and talking about how that ruins the character for them or whatever, it's like, you have what, 26 James Bond movies you can go back and watch? Like, there's enough
Mm-hmm.
content for white men to relate to. And yeah, if you're a white man and if you're watching a film and it has a black character or a female character as the main character and you can't relate to that, just imagine how every single other person in the world is feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Like any kind of person that isn't just a white guy watching almost exclusively films and shows with white guys in them, and like they have to relate to them somehow because it's all the content they get. So a James Bond movie with a woman, with a female James Bond, oh, you can't relate to that? Great, go watch something else. There's a million other things you could watch. Let the people who enjoy that idea watch that film.
Yeah, yeah. For me, just on the James Bond thing, my opinion would be like, uh, keep James Bond aside, make a female James Bond, different. Because if there is a female James Bond, still I want to connect with the story. I want to love the character, right? So it shouldn't be just to cast a woman, a character, a story, a script should be written with a woman in mind. A woman. I think John Wick Ballerina is doing very good job. I mean, the movie is still not released. I'm waiting to see it, but I think it's a very good way to go because John Wick aside, there is another strong character in the same universe, let's say.
Yeah, I agree. And I mentioned James Bond specifically because, like, I don't care whether, like, whoever they cast as next Bond, it's
Yeah.
cool. I don't have a preference, right? But I mentioned James Bond specifically because we talked a little bit about familiarity.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, we can invent an action hero that's going to be a woman. But, you know, these movies get made by studio executives who care about money exclusively,
Yeah.
basically, and it's a business. And people like to watch things they're familiar with. So continuing a franchise is probably going to make them more money than
Money. Yeah.
coming out, you know, like I think it's way less likely that we're going to see a big, massive, like spy action hero female character from a completely new franchise. I think it's more likely that at some point a woman gets cast as James Bond. I'm not saying that would be a good
Mm-hmm.
thing. I'm not saying the movie would be good because, as you said, a script should be written in mind with a woman. And I agree with all of those points. I just think it's more likely that we're going to see a female James Bond than a female character kind of in a similar vein that's going to be half as successful just
Mm-hmm.
because of how that business
Works.
works.
Okay. I also wanted to ask you about, I will use this as a segue, how actors, let's say big actors and even, actors in offbeat movies too, um, there are people who get involved in the creative process of the cinema, and I don't have any opinion on that. For me, like there are a few actors that I like and their movie I appreciate, and I believe okay there is something good in it when they get involved in a creative process, they're in the script, in the direction, and even in the marketing, right? So but as someone who I would consider you as an insider, let's say, what do you think about it?
I think it heavily depends on what the reason for getting involved is. Because I've seen a lot of films, a lot of people doing work where the actor getting involved was definitely a good thing. I think it depends on what the reason is, because in all of the bits that are like end up being bad or like the influence being there is bad, it's ego, I think. So when you
Mm-hmm.
get massive, really famous actors that get involved with a script to, I don't know, get more screen time, or I don't know, Tom Cruise doing his own stunts or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's mostly ego speaking, or like leading those people to do those things. And sometimes, you know, it's not necessarily a bad thing that they that let their ego dictate what they want to do, but they get paid so much money to do these films, and that that kind of actor influence on the script, not necessarily good, but I think there are instances in which it is good. Um, like an actor, you know, coming out and saying, "Oh, I'm not comfortable doing that scene," then don't make them do that scene. Rewrite the script for them. If you already decided that you want to hire this actor specifically, and there's no time to change the person, you just hire somebody else. And if they're not comfortable doing it, don't make them do it. I've read, you know, many instances as well of actors being like, "Oh, I did not want to do that at any point," and then the director forcing them to do it, and them just regretting doing it years later. So an actor coming out being like, "I'm not comfortable with that," or "I don't think that's what my character would do," or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
usually I think comes from a genuine place and should be listened to. And also, I don't know, there's I watch quite a lot of films about addiction because it's a subject that I kind of explore in my work as well. And for example, an actor being hired on a film that is about addiction, being an addict themselves and being able to speak on their experience and kind of make the film more kind of genuine and real
Mm-hmm.
because of that. I think that's very valuable. And I think there's many instances, not just addiction, like any kind of experience. If the actor has had the experience you're trying to portray on screen, letting them speak on it and influence the script is going to be a good thing because it's going to make it more real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think there's good and there's bad, and the bad usually comes down to ego, and all the other good parts are still there.
Okay. Yeah, like I mean, they're also part of the creative process at the
Yeah.
end of the day, right? So, favorite directors?
Favorite
Can you name a
directors?
few?
Okay. Greg Araki, for sure. It's new queer cinema, famous in the 90s, weird experimental films about teenagers being teenagers. I really appreciate his visual style specifically. Aside from Greg Araki, oh, Luca Guadagnino is I will watch any film that Luca
It's the
Guadagnino makes. He made
Italian.
Call Me by Your Name, the new Suspiria, Challengers with Zendaya
Yeah, I
recently.
watched it. Yeah.
I am not too fond of Call Me by Your Name for many reasons, but every single other film that that guy came out with, I just the era of kind of auteurs or like artistic big movie directors, like Martin Scorsese or Tarantino, the kind of director that when they make a film and you watch it, oh, you know that's a Tarantino movie,
Yeah.
right? That's like a genre in and of itself.
Yeah.
It's not an action film
Especially
or
with Tarantino.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a crime
Sources it
film.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Scorsese or it's a Quentin Tarantino movie, and you can tell. Luca Guadagnino, I think, does a really interesting thing because he like Tarantino makes crime kind of I don't know how you'd call them, but
Gore.
like
Let's call
yeah,
it gore.
like a very specific type of film. And Luca Guadagnino has made a straight up horror movie, a movie about sports, which when it came out that he was making that movie, I thought that was really crazy. He made Call Me by Your Name, which is kind of like a romantic drama thing. He made Bones and All, which is one of my favorite movies, which is gory, but it's also a coming of age kind of road trip movie. He does fascinating things with genre cinema. Kind of whatever he touches, he kind of makes it his own thing. And he remade Suspiria, which was a really great horror movie, Italian horror movie, giallo, like very specific Italian style of horror filmmaking. And he made a remake of that. And I think it's really unfair to compare these two movies and trying to decide like which one of them is better, because they're completely different things. And I just love how Guadagnino experiments and makes every single thing his own, but he also touches on so many different things. Like, oh, I'll make a horror movie, but then I'll make a romantic comedy maybe. Or he came out with Challengers, and I thought, of course I'm gonna go see it in the cinema because I'm fascinated by what this guy does. But it's a movie about tennis. I could not care less about tennis. I cannot imagine that anybody's gonna make me care about tennis. I've never cared about tennis. And that movie is a 10 out of 10 for me.
Oh wow.
It's incredible how he made a movie about tennis. It really isn't
It's
about
not about
tennis.
tennis. Yeah.
It really isn't
it's a
about tennis,
complex
even though
relationship.
yeah, tennis is very heavily featured
Yeah.
in it, but he just uses tennis as kind of
Premise.
yeah, like it's a language that he uses, and his movies are just so eloquently shot and beautiful, and everything that you see on screen is clearly a decision, which I really appreciate because, especially in indie cinema, because of budget reasons and stuff, you kind of see a scene and you have to take it for what it is. The actors are there, they're speaking, and what has value is the acting and the script. And that's mostly it, because that's what you can kind of afford when you're making an indie film. And when it comes to movies like Challengers, for example, you can tell that every single piece of clothing, every single thing that's visible, every part of the set was a very deliberate
Yeah.
decision, looking to achieve a certain effect, and it works. At least for me, it works. People have said that the scenes in Challengers, the camera becoming the tennis ball or whatever, are like flashy. But I think it's fun. I'm glad that somebody who wants to experiment has the money to experiment.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's the height of cinema or the most artistic thing.
Yeah.
It's entertainment, but I think it's brilliant entertainment, and I really love his movies a lot, and I'm looking forward to any new thing that he puts out. Yeah.
Okay. Name a few actors. Favorite actors.
Favorite actors? Oh my god, I haven't thought about that in a long time. Somebody's knocking on the door.
Yeah, just time.
Okay.
Okay. So
Favorite actors? I don't know. Oh my god. I'll think on it and I'll come back to it if something comes to mind. But I fully blanked. Sorry, I got distracted.
no
Are
problem.
we?
Yeah, we can wrap up. So You can suggest few movies for the listeners, for myself.
Just a few movies.
Yeah.
Well, if you haven't seen Challengers, watch Challengers. It's great. I also really enjoy. I love Trainspotting. Oh, I love Ewan McGregor. I love Johnny Lee Miller. I got to meet Johnny Lee Miller for a second when I was in London at the beginning of this year. I think it's great. One of my favorite actors for sure. So yeah, watch Trainspotting to get a taste of something that's like English speaking made, but not Hollywood. Great film.
Okay.
Anything by Greg Araki, especially from the 90s. There's this series, it's called the Teenage Apocalypse the Trilogy. Every single one of these movies just gets weirder and weirder, and I think that's really fun. One of my favorite movies as well is called After Yang, has Colin Firth in it. Sorry, not Colin Firth, Colin Farrell.
Colin Farrell. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant film exploring the ideas relating to like where we come from and community and memory and family and grief. Incredible film. Based on a sci-fi premise, but utilizing the sci-fi premise to explore
Oh,
very
interesting.
human, you know.
Trainspotting.
No, it's called After Yang.
After Yang.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It
Interesting.
explores very human emotions and experiences through a sci-fi premise, but the sci-fi premise is very, in the back, kind of. It's not the most important thing. It
Okay.
is a sci-fi film, I'd say. I mean, it's a drama,
Okay.
but it's set in the future, and there is like new technology and stuff. But it's all utilized to tell a story and to explore a deeply human experience. And I think that's the best thing you can do with genre cinema is take the genre and try to twist it into something that lets you tell the story you want to tell. So that's one of my top 3 favorite movies by Kogonada, he's brilliant. And yeah, watch After Yang. Great film.
Okay. So, listen, Marcel, thanks a lot for doing this. And I love cinema, and I love the fact that you get the opportunity to study it and hopefully work with a lot of movies, TV shows, whatever, comes your way. So, thank you for coming.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.